Hello, everybody. It's Tuesday night. It's 7 o'clock, and we are live. Hello, everybody. It's Tuesday night. It's 7 o'clock, and we are live. Welcome to V-Talks. I'm your host, Veronica Bruckwell. So tonight we're going to talk about a topic that I think everyone can relate to. We're going to talk about anxiety. I feel like everyone experiences this from time to time, but they're varying degrees of anxiety. And I thought I would bring on our licensed social worker and V-Talks expert, Andrew Aaron, to talk about this and possibly what we can do to help ourselves deal with this issue. So I'm going to bring him on and add him to the stream. Hello.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good, and I'm not anxious at all.
So I feel like I need to fess up.
Okay.
It's not Tuesday night, is it? No. It's not. It's Monday morning, actually. And we decided we're doing the show live, and we're not going to edit it at all. However, Andrew had some conflicts Tuesday night, and I felt like it was really important to have this particular show broadcasting on Tuesday. So we have pre-recorded, but it will be Tuesday night when you see it. So to you, it'll seem like Tuesday night. There we go.
Right. And We're ready to talk about the all-important issue of anxiety.
I don't have anxiety either. Not right now. I know. Okay. So, Andrew, anxiety, it is an epidemic, really, right?
It is. If you talk to people and learn a little bit more about them, what you're going to find is a whole lot of people suffer from a level of anxiety that really creates in their life a degree of distress, that it interferes with their ability to have a good quality of life or to tackle various situations or tasks in their life, and makes them so uncomfortable that they don't feel like they can endure or get through or be competent in different venues in their lives.
And there are different types of anxiety, right? Because, there's anxiety that's temporary, and then there's anxiety that's long lasting.
Yes. Yep. Some is more situationally based, but then there's something called generalized anxiety disorder. And that is this anxiety that pervades a life. Somebody experiences it every day and almost all the time. And life is just varying degrees of anxiety. Sometimes it's a little bit, but oftentimes a lot. And they're generally quite uncomfortable. And it's not based on any particular situation or development. They just feel nervous and uncomfortable inside, and often react with this discomfort and distress to a variety of circumstances. But it's all just like many different shades of gray. This is many, many different shades of anxiety. And people who do have generalized anxiety disorder, they often don't even realize it, because it's a little bit like if you were to ask a fish about water, the fish might say, "What is water?" It is.
That's all they know.
So it's so present that they don't identify it. And that's true of many people who have all sorts of anxiety, that in my practice, such a person will only arrive in treatment when something has happened that truly disables them. And then they come to learn that anxiety just pervades their entire life.
So Andrew, let's start with identifying what anxiety is and maybe listing some of the symptoms.
Okay. Yeah. In my practice, I have many patients who enter treatment due to anxiety. And like I said, typically there's an event that occurs that causes them such elevated amount of distress that they feel like they often can't cope, or they get even more afraid that they will face another situation which they're disabled from coping. Oftentimes, people with distressful anxiety enter treatment due to the presence of a panic attack or anxiety episode in their life. And that's an experience of very intense and extremely elevated anxiety. For some people, that occurs out of the blue, seemingly from nowhere. Others, it's in reaction to a specific incident. But a panic attack for many people shows up with real physical symptoms. Some people actually think they're dying or having a heart attack. And many people in response show up in the emergency department saying, I think I've had a heart attack or I think I'm dying, only to find out that it's an emotionally based experience that has taken them out of their day-to-day to such an extreme that, well, they're basically terrified for their life.
So let me understand here. So a panic attack, is that a symptom of anxiety?
It's an expression of acute anxiety, often the result of an accumulation over time of anxiety, oftentimes internalized emotion. It can be anger, it can be fear, internalized, and it accumulates to such an extent that there's a breakthrough moment in which there's a tremendous release of intense emotion, usually anxiety, fear, terror, and a person experiences intense distress.
Okay, so walk me through what a person would feel like if they were having a panic attack.
Oftentimes, it's a moment of complete terror in which they experience rapid heartbeat, in which their heart is beating out of their chest, profuse sweating, oftentimes not only in their armpits, but in their chest and their arms and their hands, their racing thoughts of panic and terror. Oftentimes, they cannot focus. They're overwhelmed in fear. These are horrible symptoms in which a person might think that they're going crazy.
Right.
Sometimes they can result in fainting.
What about physical? Can they have, I don't know, pain? Like you said, it's similar. They can feel like they're having a heart attack, right? Could they get like tightness in their chest or in their back, or,
breathing,
physical symptoms?
They might not be able to breathe because the tightness in their chest, or it can feel like there's an elephant sitting on their chest and they can't grab a breath.
Okay.
And it's very out of control.
And is it dangerous?
Usually it's not. Usually, if not for the tremendous fear they have in the moment, they will be okay. And after they go to the emergency department, overwhelmingly, the doctors find nothing wrong with them, nothing physically wrong with them. But the intensity of the anxiety is so large and is so physical that the sufferer truly believes that it's physically based.
Okay.
Now, a lot of people suffer from panic attacks on a regular basis, and many learn to cope with them and calm them. And it's
Okay.
very, very treatable. But this is just a moment of extreme anxiety, one that exceeds the normal anxiety that a person who has generalized anxiety will experience, an anxiety peak or an intense anxiety episode.
Okay. So let's back it up a little bit. So let's talk about anxiety that isn't extreme, but just your day to day anxiety. What are the symptoms of that generally?
A feeling of being uneasy,
Mhm.
mild distress, feeling a little nervous all the time, jumpy, um, having rapid thoughts, often negative thoughts, often fear-based thoughts, a lot of worry. Worry
Okay.
are thoughts that often start with what if, a tendency to obsess or perseverate about scary topics or failures or breakdowns. A tendency to worry also includes um, catastrophizing, right? Not just worrying that a little something will go bad, but worry that, oh, this is going to be the worst. Something terrible might happen. Something tragic might happen, or a prediction of negatives, right?
Yeah.
So people with generalized anxiety tend to worry a lot and live in quite a negative world, right? And fear that things will not go well, that there will be bad outcomes, that things will interfere. There'll be constant obstacles, right? And self-doubt. So it's really a lot of uncomfortable little symptoms that people with generalized anxiety to sort of live with on a daily basis, meaning that they're always a bit uncomfortable. And they're also a little cautious and concerned that some event will occur that will trigger more intense anxiety and the fear that they won't be able to cope well with it.
So, in your opinion, do you feel like a generalized anxiety disorder starts at a very young age?
For many, it does. For
Okay.
many people who suffer with anxiety, and it's many, many people, it's not unusual.
Yeah.
Many people in our population suffer with what I'd say is treatable anxiety. Anxiety that is a level of distress in which treatment would benefit the person to live a better quality of life and to be more effective day to day. But many, many people who have difficult anxiety often grow up in families where parents have a lot of anxiety. And it is often a learned, I wouldn't say behavior, but way of being, way of experiencing the self or of life. Often parents with a lot of anxiety emotionally train their children how to have anxiety, but also to grow up with this fear-based view of the world. The world is not a safe place. The world is a dangerous place. Bad things are likely to happen, or we have to be concerned that we may not be able to be competent or handle life well. And so there's all these messages. Another version of it is what we could say is neuroses, or growing up in a neurotic environment in which there's a lot of worry, right?
Okay.
Constant, a soup of worry in which there are all these little fears that worry that this won't go well, or worry that that won't go well, or that this outcome or this failure is going to occur. So an unsafe environment in which negatives are very likely to happen, right? Really uncomfortable, walking on eggshells all the time.
And because I think it's very normal to have anxiety, situational anxiety. That's our body's way of what is it, fight or flight stranger
Well,
danger, we
per-
have to have that mechanism, right?
perhaps we can use a different word, Veronica,
Okay,
because
let's do that because I'm not the expert.
there's a danger there. The distinction is it's common. I wouldn't say it's normal.
Okay, all right.
Because we hopefully strive for a level of well-being and health and aim for that to be our normal instead of this constant experience of distress and being ill at ease, right?
So is that fear then what I was describing and not anxiety?
The line between fear and anxiety is a blurry one because
Okay.
anxiety naturally includes quite a bit of fear. It is I'd say, a fear-based emotion. So fear is at the root of it, but anxiety has more of a body-based experience in it. It's fear incorporated. It's fear that's infected our psyche, our mental process, but also it's now stored in our bodies as well. So we often feel uncomfortable, like creepy crawlies, like I can't live in my own body. It's uncomfortable in my body. But also it affects our thought process. And both in treatment for anxiety disorders, because there's a whole group of them, and generalized anxiety is just one of the more common, and we could say almost the more benign of the anxiety disorders. Treatment includes attending to our thought process and our belief systems, as well as our physical experience and the emotions that we live out and store within our bodies. So both are really necessary to move in the direction towards a place where we feel more well, where we feel more relaxed, more at peace, more comfortable in our own skin.
So I have a question. Is anxiety contagious?
Say yes. It
Okay.
is, not in the way COVID is contagious, not in the way the flu or the common cold are contagious, because it's not passed by germs. It's passed as people. We can be open or we can be closed. And when we're open, when people are together, like in a love relationship, for instance, where one partner begins is not necessarily where the other partner ends. There's a blending. And when we have relationships, we connect and we blend with those around whom we spend time or with whom we relate. And so when people we're around feel a certain emotion, we're likely to start feeling that ourselves if we're open. And fear is a very contagious emotion. It makes me think back about a year ago, a little over a year ago, in the beginning of the pandemic. And my experience was that fear of the pandemic was more contagious than COVID itself. People were becoming extremely afraid because the situation was feeling out of control. And people would react to others' fear by taking it on themselves. So in that way, anxiety and fear are highly contagious. If you spend time around somebody who's really anxious and afraid, you're likely to start feeling it yourself if you are emotionally open.
Andrew, whenever I do this show, especially with you, I try to kind of dig deep into the topic and think about experiences that I've had in hopes that it will help others.
Right.
So ever since I was a little girl, ever since I just even remember, I've always felt that I could sense other people's feelings and emotions. And when I was very small, it was almost paralyzing.
Yes.
I was shockingly
It's hard.
shy. I was shy.
Mm.
I had a lot, I know, right?
You've come a
What?
long way.
I think so. Yeah, I didn't understand what it was, but I would literally walk into rooms. It still happens to me actually today, but I've learned to cope with it on my own, not with an expert by any means. But I would sometimes walk into a room and the energy would just shift. I would be really happy, and then I'd walk into a room and I would just feel that pit in my stomach, something wrong, or I'd meet somebody and all of a sudden I would feel like very closed off, like don't 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 get close to that person. And it's just I can't explain it. I am trying to explain best I can my feelings. But could you tell me, what that is? And is it is it a thing? Is it a condition? Is it nothing? Is it all in my own head? What is that?
Well, it sounds like as a child, you were very, very open, and you were experiencing yourself as, on a couple levels, highly sensitive to your environment, highly empathic to your environment. Also, I think at that time, you maybe were also in the process of developing a sense of yourself. And the stronger sense of self we have, we then can be more protected from the emotions of others. But as someone who is highly empathic, and some people are extremely sensitive to their environments, and that can be a blessing, that can be a curse, right?
It was hard.
Yes, it can be very hard if we can't protect ourselves from especially those who are having very uncomfortable emotions, right? And if we take that on and are swamped by it, then we can be overwhelmed by very difficult feelings, and we can lose ourselves in it and have significant distress ourselves, right? And certainly anxiety, fear are emotions that if we are very open, we will take those on board and then experience a lot of distress. And that can be a real problem, right?
Yeah.
Does that still happen to you now?
Yeah, very much so. I've just learned how to cope with it, and turn it off.
Good.
I
Good.
mean, that's the only way I can describe it. So when it happens, I just turn it off and avoid it, the emotion. I know that that's the right thing, but that's just how I've learned to handle it. So I think it would have consumed.
Well, for you and those listeners who are very, very sensitive people, there are practices that you can perform on a regular basis that build a layer of protection around you so that others' strong emotion or negative emotion kind of bounces off. It doesn't mean that you're not sensitive to them. You can sense it without taking it on board and making it part of your own personal experience. And I think that can be a healthy thing to do. Veronica, in my role as a psychotherapist, it's my job to sit with people every day who are in a lot of pain. And when I treat people with very difficult anxiety, just the patient coming to my office is an anxiety provoking event. So they're likely to come into my space feeling very, very anxious. And in order to perform well my duties and obligations to help people feel better, I have to be protected from those emotions. Otherwise, very quickly, I wouldn't be able to be of use to them and help them to feel better. So I've learned to protect myself from the pain and the intense negative emotion that my patients suffer from on a daily basis, all, of course, in the name of helping them to learn to cope better with those feelings, to calm those feelings, to feel better, and to have greater skills at allowing their lives to be of better quality.
So for those of our viewers that actually don't understand the term empath, can you define that for them, please?
Well, an empath is somebody who is very open and highly sensitive to others' emotional state. There are those who are extremely fine-tuned. You know, we have this notion of somebody who's a psychic. That's somebody who can be highly empathic. But there are people who are highly empathic to others' emotional states without any psychic skills as well. And those are people who can sense their environment, can sense where others are at emotionally. And if those are joined with great social skills, those people can be very, very effective in a social environment. However, if they're not able to combine that with good social skills or are not able to limit the amount of emotion they take on, it can result in distress and actually being disabled in social environments because people are emitting a whole lot of a full range of emotions, many of which are uncomfortable and painful feelings.
Well, and I think, with my experience growing up, it was trying to decipher, is this energy I'm feeling directed towards me? Or is this energy I'm feeling just am I absorbing what they went through during the day?
Right.
You know?
I think a good question is this my feeling or is this somebody else's?
Okay.
And to limit the question about taking it personally. Is it directed toward me? And instead, is this mine or am I taking on somebody else's? And to know yourself well, to say, okay, I know me. These are my different feelings. And I am taking this on and allowing you to then learn about other people, but also the ability to have choice in it. I take this on, and this is useful information for me to understand about another, to be sensitive, to be compassionate towards another, to understand their suffering and maybe to be of help, or to be able to say, this is not my emotion, this I'm getting from somebody else, and I don't choose to experience this right now. So I'm choosing to put up my defenses so I don't take it on. So I'm not swamped by it, and therefore feeling things that are not mine and limiting my choice about who I am in this moment and how I function in this moment.
Yeah. So it is certainly challenging, and I guess so. Can you define it in a scientific way? What we're experiencing?
I'm not sure we could in a scientific way. There probably
So
are
it's
some.
energy,
It's
right?
energy, it's experience, it's emotion. It's not quantifiable or even measurable. However, we could subjectively measure it, right? So I don't think it's within the realm of science, but more subjective experience. Just
And
as,
in your practice, you how often do you see this?
oh, often.
Right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I work with a lot of very empathic people. I think women tend to be more empathic. Women, I think, in the feminine, one aspect of the feminine is openness. And I think many women growing up from children, little girls to adult women learn how to close themselves down out of self-protection as well. But women by nature are open and therefore are susceptible to taking on others' emotions. And this can create both increased anxiety and distress for many women who are very open, and that results in many, many women and female partners from attending to others' needs and first considering the partner, the family, the neighborhood, the community before they consider their own needs and feelings. And that can result in an imbalance, significant distress, and significant anxiety. And that's a version of being very sensitive and empathic to the environment. But we have to achieve balance and be able to make choices about where our limits exist, where to set the limits, how to balance between caring for ourselves, being true to ourselves, and caring for those around us, our children, our partners, our family members, and to strike this balance so we can preserve our own well-being, right?
Yeah.
And for those who are very, very sensitive, highly sensitive people and empathic, that balance is even harder, right?
Yeah.
Because we're aware of others' distress. And for many women who are very, very caring people, they want others to be well, right? But often the result is that the other becomes well and cared for, and the woman that we're talking about, the highly sensitive, open woman, now takes on that distress, and now she has it. And she's limited or disabled in it, or suffering significant distress, which isn't good for her. So we have to care for ourselves and love for ourselves, and realize that if we do a good job of loving ourselves, in the longer run, we're more able to then care for those around us. We will end up having more to give and to be more loving and compassionate to those around us. Whereas if we give of ourselves without limit, we then exhaust ourselves, and we then become a vessel filled with negative emotion, and we're now not good for anybody, including ourselves. So caring for ourselves, learning to calm our anxiety, learn to protect and have boundaries, so that we are not swamped by others' negative emotion, their anger, their anxiety, their fear, their greed, their, all these difficult feelings we can take on board. It's not good for us, right?
Not at all.
No.
So we've kind of identified different types of anxiety. Let's start with what we can do to help calm this. It's not a condition. What do we call an emotion?
Well, it is the emotion of
Okay.
fear, the emotion of anxiety, but it comes in many, many forms. And when those difficult emotions reach a level at which they cause significant distress or interfere with our ability to function at our best, or a level of competency day to day, then it's called a disorder.
Okay.
Right? And we have a number of them. We talked about generalized anxiety disorder. It's very common. We can talk about obsessive compulsive disorder. We can talk about panic disorder.
Yeah.
We can explore post-traumatic stress disorder, which is often the result of trauma. And many, many people have suffered trauma. It's unfortunately altogether too common, whether it's childhood abuse, emotional, verbal, sexual, physical abuse, whether it's abuse in past love relationships, or experience of violence or violent incidents such as a car accident, right? Or in a past show, Veronica, you invited me to talk about the issue of bullying, and many, many people who've experienced school bullying are left with symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder, right? And that shows up in forms of distressing anxiety, oftentimes anxiety that can get triggered by a variety of difficult incidents, right? In which we're left with really uncomfortable anxiety, Of course, those veterans who've been in war and have experienced violence have post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD, right? And all these are different flavors or forms of anxiety, but there are more other kinds that are not immediately acknowledged or believed to be anxiety related. And that's something like perfectionism is an anxiety disorder, or a tendency towards being a people pleaser, or a tendency to be very rigid, like aspects of OCD or obsessive compulsive disorder, in which we want our environment to be just so. So everything in our world is peaceful and is arranged properly so we can relax. But also, people suffer from anxiety regarding being productive. We can say a workaholic. Often there's a root of anxiety in that. People who can't relax until everything is complete. If there's
It
something
never
that,
is.
what's that?
But it never is.
Well, and that's, for those people, that's what results in it being particularly distressing, is they can never give themselves permission to relax, because in this day and age of intense requirements and responsibilities, things are never complete. And that's why moms with little children are often driven to the point of exhaustion, is because things are never finished. And those who have a tendency towards OCD or obsessive compulsive disorder exhaust themselves, always running on adrenaline, because their job is never finished. The house is never in order. Things are always in chaos. And so they can't relax, right? The workaholic whose job is never finished. But oftentimes in those who they enter into substance abuse or alcohol dependence. Oftentimes these folks have an underlying anxiety disorder, and they've found that alcohol or different kinds of drugs initially soothe their anxiety, and they utilize the drugs or alcohol as a way of self-medicating to feel better. And then over time, they become dependent on these substances, and the substances take control of them, and they lose control of their dependence, and they become addicted. And it's very distressing, causes lots of problems in life, in jobs, in love relationships. And in general, Veronica, anxiety disorders cause lots of problems in love relationships, cause a great deal of difficulty with intimacy, with closeness, with emotional safety, with the kind of romantic and passionate connections, with being a good sexual partner, because people often with PTSD or tremendous anxiety do not feel that they can be vulnerable or open up, or can't relax sufficiently to allow great connection or closeness. And so often it causes distress for the partners, or unhappiness. And so, yeah, we have a link then, Veronica, between anxiety disorders and then depression, right? Because often they go hand in hand, or one is related or an outgrowth of the other. So there's a whole lot there, Veronica, to then
I know.
and all these are branches of anxiety. Yeah. So it's important for people to identify that, oh, there are symptoms and traits of anxiety that people might not initially identify as related to anxiety. But this is very, very common, and causes a lot of people distress. And I think most people can get treatment, and most people can find relief in parts of their lives that they never even identified as treatable or anxiety. And so I think initially, when someone identifies that, oh, this is anxiety, my inability to feel comfortable is anxiety, the opposite of anxiety is relaxation. Okay. And for so many people who've lived with lifelong anxiety, what they find is that anxiety seems unobtainable. They can't let go of these feelings, that these feelings, this anxiety, this ill at ease is always present. It's just present in varying intensities. And so when a person tries to relax and they can't, that's when they have to be able to say, okay, I can't relax at the moment. So learning to relax, which is a natural state, is obtainable, but it may take me a lot of practice to regain this natural human state of being relaxed, of feeling internally free to be myself and to be at peace. It is obtainable, but for many with generalized anxiety disorder or lifelong anxiety, especially of someone who grew up in an anxious household, it can really be a lifelong task of practicing relaxing, of practicing having more positive thoughts, of more calming thoughts, thoughts of self-love, thoughts of support, positive thoughts of life is going to be okay, I'm going to be all right, of developing better cognitive hygiene, of challenging the negative worry-based thoughts, that those thoughts do not have to be our natural state. Those are negative and anxiety-provoking thoughts. And as we've talked in the past, Veronica, I've actually talked some about meditation. And meditation is a very, very important and healthy practice in the goal of living an anxiety-free life, of becoming calm and learning how to obtain a healthy emotional state free of daily anxiety and anxiety-related stress.
So, what do you say to the patient that shows up in your office and says, well, I just can't relax. I can't sleep. I can't relax. I just can't. Nothing works. What would you say to that person?
I'd say over time, you can learn to relax, that this is not your permanent state, and that with the right efforts, the right guidance, and us working in treatment, you will be successful at reducing your anxiety and starting to feel better over time. And a lot of the reduction in anxiety may actually happen fairly quickly in a period of months, right? But you also mentioned another symptom of anxiety, often trauma, is sleep disturbance. Many people who have lifelong anxiety or generalized anxiety disorder, certainly panic disorder, also have sleep disturbance. They have a hard time having good sleep, healthy sleep, undisturbed sleep a whole night, right? Many people who are highly sensitive people who are often on guard in their environments, another symptom of PTSD, of being very vigilant for distress or for being triggered, also can't get to a level of being sufficiently relaxed and to let go of stress to get to a deep level of sleep where sleep is satisfying and restful. And that increases their susceptibility every day to difficult anxiety and sometimes even panic attacks, right? So sleep is a big factor. Both it's a symptom of reaction to having distressing anxiety, but also a life state that makes a person more susceptible to anxiety and anxiety-related distress.
I've had several of my friends tell me that they cannot sleep because they have a constant loop going on in their brain and they can't shut it off, right?
Right.
I actually don't have that. I can go right to sleep.
Wonderful.
I'm very lucky. I know I am. I think I'm just so exhausted by the end of the day. I'm just like, boom. But
Yep.
I have many friends that cannot sleep.
Well,
How do you turn off that loop?
The rapid spinning thoughts is a symptom of anxiety. It's a symptom in many of the anxiety disorders that I just mentioned. Another symptom of it often is rapid speech. Somebody who speaks rapidly and they've developed a habit of speaking in a way that probably is attempting to keep up with the pace of their thoughts, right? And it's very distressing. It's very uncomfortable, right? That over time will also reduce through the different practices and treatment. Meditation is definitely one. Starting to be conscious of these symptoms of anxiety, taking note that my thoughts are very rapid. I don't have control of the pace. My thoughts are running me. I am not running my thoughts. I don't have control. The pace of speech, the state in the body, and the comfort, to what degree are these emotions running us rather than us running them? How much choice do we have about our own emotional state, right? So I would work with somebody, I would encourage them to do more exercise, because exercise is very, very healthy to reduce our intensity and to achieve well-being, right? Some good cardio, to push our body, some weight training, different kinds of sporting events, cycling, tennis, playing group sports, I think is really, really healthy for people. And this all can help us reduce our anxiety. Watching the thoughts, developing what I call cognitive hygiene, or starting to develop much more positive thoughts. I guide people through a process of challenging the thoughts instead of just letting the thoughts show up and accepting them for what they are, to actually start challenging negative or worry-based thoughts.
So how would you do that?
So let's say we worry. I worry that if I drive my car, I'm going to get into a car accident, right?
Okay.
Or people, I didn't talk about phobias and fears.
I know there's so much.
Another form of anxiety, or we could say fear. Fear is a more primary level of emotion, and then anxiety flows out of the fear. Phobias are more related to the fear, but they definitely have an anxiety-based component. So let's say I have a phobia of driving on the highway. And the mark of a phobia is something about which I've been so afraid that I avoid doing it. And now fear runs my life. There's agoraphobia, arachnophobia, fear of spiders. Of course, fear of flying in an airplane, fear of bridges, fear of elevators, and claustrophobia, or tight spaces. Agoraphobia, fear of open spaces, but a big part of that is fear of being in crowds, right?
What is your position on facing your fears?
I think it's vitally important. It's
Me too.
Necessary. I think in order for us to become strong, capable people, and I'm an advocate of living fearlessly, which what I mean by that is not that we don't have fear, but that we don't give our fear the power to run our life. We are going to challenge our fear and therefore not allow our fear to have access to our intention, right? To live our life with courage, with strength, to not let fear guide our life, because our fear will always cause us to back away from living a good quality of life, right? And those who grant a great deal of power to their fear usually do result in having phobias, but also having anxiety disorders. Fear is a big portion of all these anxiety disorders, and starting to challenge our fear is an important way to take control of our emotional state and to get our power to live a good quality of life back from our anxiety and our fear.
So the person that has a fear of going out on the highway should go out on the highway.
Eventually, yeah. There's immersion therapy, which
is that?
Is gradually being exposed to the discomfort of the fear, but in small doses, so we don't become overwhelmed and we don't become shut down to it. It doesn't cause such distress that we're not able to cope with it. So we gradually adjust to it and start to realize, oh, I can feel this and I'm not harmed by it, or I'm not disabled by it, or I'm not killed by it. I survived it. So I can tolerate this, and gradually increasing the amount that we can tolerate until we get to the point where we're no longer afraid of tolerating the discomfort of that experience, such as driving on the highway, driving over a bridge, or being in an environment where there are a lot of people. Or Veronica, I didn't mention a very, very common form of anxiety or disorder, and that is social anxiety disorder, which is very common, and people have tremendous discomfort entering into a social situation in which there are a lot of people in a social environment.
And they'll avoid going.
Yes.
They'll
Well,
make excuses. Yeah.
Avoidance is a big piece in all of the anxiety disorders. Avoiding a place that will cause us discomfort or distress, avoiding a task that makes us feel foolish or prone to mistakes, right? Avoiding whatever, right? It's a big part of all the phobias and anxiety disorders. And when we operate out of avoidance, we then are giving our fear or our discomfort more power right. to run our lives and to limit our lives. And gradually, because anxiety and fear are a bit like a cancer, they will spread if we don't stop them. If we respect our fear and anxiety, they will spread to take more and more of our lives away. And when we start using our strength to say no, to say, I will not allow my fear or my anxiety to stop me. I will challenge it. And that's when we stop the spread of the cancer of fear and anxiety. And we start taking control of our lives, taking our lives back so that we can eventually arrive at a place of well-being and autonomy, of feeling proud of ourselves, right?
So the person that has the running loop in their brain of just all the things that could go wrong in their life, or all the things that are negative that are going on in their life, what does that person do? Because it's not really a facing of fear, right?
That's more of starting a new practice to challenge certain thoughts, especially worry thoughts, because that loop that's going on is filled with negative and worry-based thoughts. And worry thoughts almost always begin with the words, what if? What if this happens? What if that happens? What if this terrible thing happens? And I would encourage that person to start a new habit that whenever they catch themselves starting a thought with what if, they then respond to that by saying, no, instead of living in the future, of predicting a negative and scary future, which is the hallmark of a worry thought, I am going to bring my attention right here, right now, and experience my current life situation, my current physical sensations, my current experience of feeling my keys on the keyboard, of feeling my body sitting in the chair, of listening to the sound around me, and to experience this present moment and allow myself to be filled with the sensations of this present moment, instead of giving myself constant permission of rushing off into a scary future and envisioning that future and fueling my anxiety. And starting to challenge this negative cognitive loop of negativity and worry and driving my anxiety higher. So it's a practice.
In your opinion, do you feel like your brain can be comfortable in that pattern?
Never.
No, you don't.
Stress. No. It's
Okay.
constant distress. However, people do adjust to what is their normal. And if
Mhm.
someone has lived that way for 10 years, 20 years, it will simply become their normal.
Mhm.
And they will grow insensitive to their own experience. A little bit like uh, there's the story of the frog that was gradually put in water, that was gradually heated up so that that frog eventually became able to endure boiling hot water even though it was killing it. That's the person
Oh.
who becomes so adjusted to their distress that they often end up with this debilitating panic attack and they didn't see it coming and it landed them in the hospital disabled and prevented from performing their daily duties, and they never saw it coming, and
Mhm.
they almost did themselves permanent damage and harm, right? So we have to
So,
calm ourselves, learn to calm ourselves, and to cultivate in our daily life a state of being relaxed. That's our well being, right?
are there exercises you can do to eliminate those thoughts? So, are there ways that you can learn to shut off the racing thoughts?
With practice. Those
Mhm.
people who've suffered lifelong anxiety or grew up in anxious families or
Mhm.
have suffered from generalized anxiety disorder, this will be a lifelong practice of relaxing yourself, of getting better and better at it over time. However, for many people, anxiety is going to be a feature of their lives every day, but they can learn to gradually over time reduce it, and manage it. Other people have greater capacity to reduce the anxiety and actually may be better at achieving increased levels of relaxation. But daily practices of meditation, I think, are extremely important for improving our ability to relax. But also, like I said, these cognitive practices of challenging fear based thoughts, worry thoughts, negative thoughts, because negativity is also a sign of distress, of anxiety, and depression. And realize that there's no amount of negativity that's going to help us live a positive life. So we want to cultivate positive thoughts, thoughts about successes, about competency, about good feeling, about living a good quality of life and being able to enjoy our everyday of life.
Well, because life happens and life isn't always perfect, and there are, issues every single day that we all deal with.
Yes.
And sometimes some days are worse than others, and there are times when things are so bad you don't think you're ever going to climb out and things are ever going to be the same. So we're not saying, you have to be happy all the time. That's not what this is about, right?
No, of course not. No, we
Right.
even if we live a life free of anxiety, that doesn't mean that life still isn't a combination of good and bad, of
Right.
fortunate events and unfortunate events. But when we do experience an unfortunate event, if we react with tremendous distress, fear, we're consumed with worry, and in our thoughts, we're predicting negative outcomes, then we
Mhm.
will disable our ability to climb out of a negative experience and create a positive and a learning experience from it, right?
Right.
So we don't want to limit our possibilities, but we will still experience a variation of life events. But a negative life event isn't a cause for panic. It's
Mm.
not a cause for doom and gloom and worry that nothing will ever be good again. Because if we are able to accept that experience, embrace it, learn from it, then very easily we're able to let go of it and then live something very positive and fulfilling.
So it's, I think you said earlier that you're predicting the future. It's almost protective, right? Like it's controlling the future. Is that
But
what you were saying?
it's wonderful that you said that, Veronica, because deep inside the warrior, the person who just worries chronically, or the person with a lot of anxiety, there's a sense deep down that the person feels like if they worry enough, they have control. But it's an illusion. They actually have lost control. They've lost control of the quality of their life. They've lost control of their emotional state. But the illusion is that if I worry about this outcome or that outcome, I now have prepared myself for it. But the reverse is true. They've actually disabled themselves to handle it well, right?
I'm coming from a place of experience. I
Yeah.
used to be that person. Yeah. I used to be that person. Thank you. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not perfect. I still do it from time to time, but I used to be like that when I
We
was
don't want to be
younger.
perfect. We want to be human. We don't want to be
But
perfect.
I figured out like I'm trying to control like the end result. And even if it's bad,
Right.
I'm still prepared, and I've prepared for that.
Well, this is what
Does that make sense?
This is what
even if it's bad though.
the anxious person
Yeah.
worries about a negative outcome. And
Yeah.
in their worry, they're not able to give the moment the kind of attention that actually produces the best result. So they actually create the negative result by virtue of their worrying, because everything we do comes from our ability to be relaxed, concentrate, and focus. And if we're anxious, we don't focus well. And we then produce the negative result that we fear. So if we're able to relax ourselves, almost everything we do better. And we actually end up producing better results. Right?
Yeah.
So people who worry a lot actually are likely to create the negative future that they fear, and which justifies their worry. So
right. I was right. I
it's
was
a
right. I knew that
self-fulfilling
I knew this was going to happen.
Exactly.
I told you it
So
happened
they
just
then
like I
lead to
said,
worry.
right?
Yeah. So
I was right.
that's the illusion of their anxiety and why they grip tightly onto their worry and their anxiety disorders, right? Which is too bad. It's unnecessary distress, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So let's kind of recap some things that people can do at home. Relaxation, meditation,
Exercise.
which you have guided meditations on your website, helpforpassion.com, don't you?
Yes, I do. I think it's $1.99. It's a recorded audio of my voice. I guide you through progressive relaxation where you relax your entire body. And then there's a guided visualization for going to a deeply relaxed place in a beautiful natural scene, which also includes some suggestions for well-being and for good self-esteem. Right.
Yeah, I highly recommend doing that because I've actually done that with Andrew, and it's just a very simple, soothing way to learn how to meditate. Really,
very healthy, very, very healthy. I strongly encourage
Sure.
people. They can visit my website at helpforpassion.com. You can see
It's on the ticker.
on the ticker there. I think it's important for the listeners to know that worry is not a natural state. It's not a healthy thought process. If you find yourself worrying a lot, that's a sign that you have an unhealthy, unnecessary level of anxiety in your life. And there's opportunity for you to feel better and for you to be more effective and happier in your life. Right?
So we have exercise, relaxation, meditation.
More positive thought process. So starting to watch your thoughts and catch yourself with negative thoughts, which can be habitual, to challenge those thoughts when you say, oh, I'll never succeed at this, be able to neutralize that thought by saying to yourself, hey, wait a sec, I don't need to talk to myself that way. I don't need to predict negative outcomes. No, I'm going to be open to the possibility that I will succeed at this, or I'm going to do this better than I did it the last time, or I deserve to have a good outcome. So to challenge these negative thoughts and to challenge worry thoughts with, instead of what if this happens, no, I'm going to be here now and pay attention to my current experience instead of worrying about the future. What if this happens? What if that happens? Right.
Or tell that thought like it's a third person, knock it off and go make yourself a sandwich.
Beautiful. Right.
Right?
Knock it off. Don't talk to
knock
me
it
that way.
off. Right? Yeah. Like
Talk to me like a friend. Talk to me like someone who cares. Right? Talk to me in a nice way, supportive, kind, encouraging, like a really good friend.
Yeah, I need some ice cream.
That's right.
That's right. That'll make you smile, right?
Yeah, right.
Mm-hmm. And do something fun, right? So when those thoughts come,
distract yourself with a positive experience, an enjoyable experience, as long as it's in line with you also achieving whatever you need to accomplish for the day, right?
Because worrying about things that we have no control over isn't helping fix anything.
No, it's an illusion.
It's not fixing anything. And it almost seems like, I know with my experience when I really did used to be a big worrier. I'm so much better now. But I would almost feel like if I'm not worrying about this, I was almost feeling guilty.
Yeah, that's that illusion of control, right?
It is.
That if I don't have control, I'm not taking responsibility, and I'm shirking my responsibilities.
Yeah.
But it's not. In fact, being relaxed is a state of being open and receptive that allows us to respond to the moment in the most effective way we can, and ends up producing the best possible results.
Because not thinking about something 24 hours a day doesn't mean that you don't care.
Right. It's actually, Veronica, it's a state of trusting ourselves. Mm-hmm. When we are relaxed and receptive and are able to be responsive to the moment in our own natural way, to be who we are and to accept ourselves as a good enough human being, right? Yeah. And being anxious or stressed or in fear holds us back from being receptive, living the moment, living in the present, and being our best.
Yeah.
Right?
Really good show. Seriously.
Good
no, really. Very, very good information. I feel like you have helped a lot of people today.
I hope some people have been able to listen and glean some important practices and help to understand what is healthy versus what is unhealthy and unnecessary.
And anyone can make an appointment, no matter where you live, with Andrew Aaron.
Absolutely.
You can see him in his office, or you can meet with him virtually. He also has many options on his website, many programs that you can sign up for. Can you tell our listeners a little bit about some of the programs that you have online?
Yes, I have an online course for couples called We Just Can't Communicate, and that's for couples who've become stuck in a cycle of ineffective communication with the partner. That's when attempts to solve problems between you and your partner escalate into frequent or chronic arguments. That's, I think, a really powerful online course. There's the relaxation exercise, of course, that's on my website. There's several books that I've written including a book for couples who are struggling with issues of intimacy and erectile dysfunction, called When Soft is Hard, and that's for men who suffer performance anxiety. Oh, Veronica, there's another form of anxiety, isn't there?
Right.
Sexual performance anxiety for men who've gotten stuck in anxiety and therefore are not able to maintain their arousal and erection during intimate moments. So there's a book for those men and the partners to help with that very, very difficult issue. There's also another book that's a collection of my articles from the column that I write in SoCo magazine. And that book is called Love is Simple, But We Are Not. And it's all about love. And of course, fear is the opposite of love. And fear is the major element in anxiety, right? So our struggle to love ourselves, our struggle to love others, especially in our love relationships, oftentimes is contributed to by fear and anxiety. And that book is called Love is Simple, But We Are Not. And there's a lot in that book about anxiety and fear, as well as other obstacles to loving ourselves and others.
A lot of information. Please go to helpforpassion.com. Check out Andrew's website. I'm sure there are a lot of articles on there that are, tremendous, helpful. And I thank you, my friend.
Thank you for saying so.
It's true.
For your kind words. Thank you.
All right. Well, I think we're going to wrap this up because we are, 1 hour and 11 minutes.
We've gone over, haven't we? Once again,
but we've had 111, 1111. Yeah.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Magical numbers there.
Magical numbers, my friend. All right. Thank you so much. We will see you next month.
Okay, Veronica, great spending the time with you. And thank you for coming up with a wonderful topic.
Oh, no, thank you very much. All right. You take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope that Andrew Aaron was able to help you identify anxiety and hopefully give you some tools to help manage it. We will be back next Tuesday night at 7 o'clock with another great guest, another great topic. Until then, thank you so much for listening and have